At Westside Middle School, a moment of humiliation was about to ignite a revolution no one could have predicted. The clock had barely struck 9:15 when 13-year-old Thompson stumbled into Ms. Maxwell's math class, clutching his backpack like a shield. His tardiness, already a black mark in her critical eyes, set the stage for a punishment designed to wound deeper than any detention slip ever could. Ms. Maxwell, a teacher feared more than respected, decided to make an example of him. With a cruel smirk, she erased the 8th grade algebra problem on the board and replaced it with a nightmare, a complex calculus equation intended for her 11th grade advanced placement students. "Since you refuse to sit like everyone else," she said, her voice thick with disdain, "let's see how special you really are." The class buzzed with laughter, the clock ticking like a drumbeat of doom. But what Ms. Maxwell didn't know was that she wasn't humiliating Thompson. She was unlocking a secret the entire school had failed to see. Hidden beneath his quiet demeanor and unassuming grades was a mind sharper than anyone could imagine. A prodigy forged not in privileged prep classes, but in silent, painful perseverance. Today, justice was about to demand the spotlight. Before diving into the full story, comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest inspirational stories. Thompson's heart pounded against his ribs like a trapped bird as Ms. Maxwell turned from the whiteboard with a malicious glint in her eyes. "You have 5 minutes, Thompson," she sneered, her voice slicing through the classroom's heavy silence. Laughter, low and mocking, rippled across the rows of desks. This was not a challenge. It was a setup, one she expected him to fail spectacularly. But Thompson didn't move to flee. He stood still, eyes scanning the complex calculus problem sprawling across the board. The symbols danced, intertwined, forming patterns he knew by heart. While his classmates had spent afternoons playing games and scrolling endlessly on their phones, Thompson had been somewhere else, buried deep in the dusty mathematics section of Westside Public Library. At first, the world of higher math had seemed like an alien language, indecipherable and vast. But Thompson had patience. Night after night, with the battered old textbooks no one else bothered to check out, he had slowly taught himself the language of calculus. He memorized the rules of derivatives, absorbed the art of integration, and found solace in the predictable dance of numbers when everything else in his life was chaos. At home, things weren't easy. His family lived paycheck to paycheck in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment where he shared a wall-thin room with his younger sister. His mother, a nurse's aide, and his father, a construction worker, did what they could, but neither had the time or resources to support his hidden academic pursuits. Thompson's achievements remained his secret, a shield he built quietly in the margins of a world that rarely showed him kindness. Ms. Maxwell, however, knew none of this. To her, Thompson was just another troublesome student, another dark-skinned boy too stubborn to fall into line. In her mind, real achievement was reserved for the students she deemed worthy, the ones from the good families who attended PTA meetings and made generous donations to the school. Thompson stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly as he picked up a dry erase marker. The students leaned forward in their seats, some snickering, others whispering behind their hands. Veronica Maxwell crossed her arms, already savoring the spectacle of his inevitable humiliation. He blocked them out. The familiar rhythm of math began to unfurl in his mind. Recognize the form, apply the method, simplify, solve. He broke down the complex integral, performing a substitution instinctively, then moved through each layer of simplification with a speed that should have stunned anyone paying attention. His hand moved faster, surer, as the problem resolved itself beneath his fingertips. Silence fell over the classroom. Not mockery, not laughter, just confused, thick silence. By the time Thompson underlined his final answer and put down the marker, the room was frozen. Even Zach, the class clown who often mocked him most loudly, sat gaping at the completed solution. Ms. Maxwell's triumphant smirk faltered. She stalked toward the board, scanning the work with her sharp, hawk-like gaze. Her face paled almost imperceptibly. She read it again and again. This can't be," she muttered. Thompson stood quietly, not smirking, not gloating, just waiting. Ms. Maxwell's voice rose, trembling with a mixture of fury and disbelief. Where did you cheat from? She barked. You must have memorized this. Who helped you? No one, ma'am, Thompson said, his voice steady. I solved it. You insolent little... She started, but caught herself, glancing nervously at the stunned faces around the room. She needed to reassert her authority, and fast. Without warning, she grabbed the board eraser and violently scrubbed away the elegant solution, leaving only ugly smudges behind. Principal's office. Now! She screamed, her voice shrill. Thompson gathered his things slowly, his pride intact even as his hands shook from adrenaline. As he walked toward the door, a voice piped up from the back of the room, a voice no one expected to hear. What if he really did solve it? Aisha said, her voice trembling but firm. Miss Maxwell whirled around. Quiet, she snapped. But the damage was done. A seed of doubt had been planted in the room. Thompson walked out, head high, leaving behind a classroom that would never quite look at him the same way again. Outside, as the hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, Thompson tightened his grip on his backpack. He didn't know what awaited him in Principal Williams' office. He didn't know if justice would finally find him. But he knew one thing for certain. For the first time, he had shown all of them, who he truly was. And that truth could never be erased. The hard wooden bench outside Principal Williams' office groaned under Thompson's slight weight. His fingers dug into the straps of his backpack like a lifeline. Through the frosted glass, he could hear muffled voices, Ms. Maxwell's shrill accusations rising and falling like a violent storm. She's already spinning it, Thompson thought grimly. Inside, she was painting him as a cheater, a troublemaker. He could almost hear the words, disrespectful, disruptive, impossible that he solved it. The secretary at the front desk threw him a wary glance every so often. Thompson was no stranger to this bench. In the past, he'd been sent here for minor infractions, talking out of turn, being too slow to respond when called upon. Always little things that stacked up into a bigger label. Problem student. The door swung open suddenly. Principal Williams, tall and tired-looking, stood silhouetted in the doorway. Come in, Thompson, he said, his voice flat. Thompson swallowed hard and stepped inside. Veronica Maxwell sat ramrod straight in one of the visitor chairs, her expression a carefully controlled mask of indignation. Principal Williams gestured toward another chair. Thompson hesitated, then noticed the hard, rigid seat and the sharp spike of pain in his back. Gritting his teeth, he remained standing. I said sit down, Thompson, Williams repeated more firmly. I can't, sir, Thompson stammered. Why not? Thompson hesitated. Ms. Maxwell's gaze drilled into him, sharp and warning. He could almost hear her silent threat. Say anything, and you'll regret it. My back hurts, he said quietly, eyes fixed on the floor. Williams frowned. From what? Before Thompson could answer, Ms. Maxwell jumped in, her voice dripping with false concern. He claims to have fallen, she said, another excuse to avoid consequences. Principal Williams steepled his fingers, studying Thompson intently. Let's get to the point. Ms. Maxwell tells me you disrupted class, refused to sit, and then produced a solution to a calculus problem well beyond your grade level. She believes you cheated. What do you have to say for yourself? I didn't cheat, Thompson said, forcing the words past the lump in his throat. I've been studying advanced math on my own. Ms. Maxwell barked a sharp laugh. Preposterous. Thompson's hands curled into fists at his sides. If you want, I can solve another problem. Right now, in front of you. Veronica's face turned an ugly shade of red. Principal Williams raised a hand to silence her. Interesting proposal, Williams said slowly, but unfortunately, the matter of your refusal to follow classroom instructions still stands? Thompson opened his mouth to protest, but the door creaked open again. Excuse me, said a new voice, a voice that made hope bloom unexpectedly in Thompson's chest. It was Miss Carter, the young science teacher, bright-eyed and unflinchingly kind. She stepped into the office, a manila folder tucked under one arm. I heard Thompson was here, she said, glancing from Williams to Thompson to Maxwell. May I have a moment? This is a disciplinary matter, Miss Carter, Miss Maxwell snapped. Yes, Miss Carter replied sweetly, which involves one of my best students. Both Williams and Maxwell blinked. Best student? Williams echoed skeptically. Absolutely, Miss Carter said firmly. She turned to Thompson. Would this happen to have anything to do with your independent study projects? Thompson nodded, cautious hope flickering in his eyes. Miss Carter turned back to Principal Williams. Last spring, Thompson entered the regional science fair. His project involved mathematical modeling of biological systems, using differential equations no less. He placed first in mathematics and third overall. Principal Williams looked at Thompson as if seeing him for the very first time. Veronica scoffed. One project hardly proves. It wasn't just one project, Miss Carter interrupted smoothly. Thompson has consistently demonstrated an ability far beyond great expectations. I have documented proof. She handed the manila folder to Principal Williams, who flipped it open and began scanning the contents. Lab reports, project summaries, competition results. The color drained slowly from Veronica Maxwell's face. This changes things, Principal Williams murmured. Thompson stood quietly, a flicker of stubborn pride straightening his shoulders. They would have ignored me, brushed me aside, but Miss Carter, she had seen him. Still, the road ahead was far from clear. Given this new information, Principal Williams said finally, we'll postpone any disciplinary action. Instead, Thompson will take a supervised examination to validate his mathematical abilities. Ms. Maxwell bristled. I should be allowed to prepare the test. You may submit problems, Williams said curtly, but I will personally review them. He turned to Thompson. You'll take the test tomorrow morning. Are you willing? Thompson nodded without hesitation. Yes, sir. Principal Williams leaned back in his chair, the manila folder still open in front of him. His voice was low, almost regretful. For your sake, Thompson, I hope you're telling the truth. I am, Thompson said softly. I always have been. And for the first time in his life at Westside Middle School, someone actually listened. The night before the test, Thompson sat hunched over a battered library book on his tiny bedroom desk, the faint hum of the city filtering through the cracked window. His sister slept soundly across the room, curled up under a blanket patterned with cartoon moons and stars. Thompson kept the light low, shielding the glow with his hand, but his mind blazed brighter than any lamp. The problems in front of him blurred, not from confusion, but exhaustion. He understood the material, vectors, integrals, limits, but the fear of failure gnawed at him relentlessly. What if he froze under pressure? What if Ms. Maxwell had designed the test to humiliate him? A text buzzed on his phone, breaking his spiraling thoughts. Dr. Roberts, remember, math isn't about memorizing, it's about patterns. Trust yourself. You've already won by standing up. A small smile flickered across Thompson's face. He hadn't told Dr. Roberts about the welts on his back, or the way Ms. Maxwell's icy disdain clung to him like a second skin. But somehow the professor knew exactly what he needed to hear. Thompson closed the book and leaned back, staring up at the cracked ceiling. Tomorrow wasn't just about a grade. It was about reclaiming the truth of who he was. At 6 a.m., his mother roused him gently with a kiss on the forehead and a plate of scrambled eggs. Eat, baby. You need your strength. His father ruffled his hair. Show him what's what, son. Thompson scarfed down the meal, his nerves buzzing too fiercely for much appetite. As he left, his mother slipped a tiny folded note into his pocket. For after, she whispered. The school loomed ahead, cold and foreboding against the gray sky. Students milled about, whispering and glancing his way. Word had spread fast, about the test, about the accusations, about the boy who might be a secret genius or a secret fraud. He ignored the looks, keeping his head high. Ms. Carter was waiting by the conference room door, her warm smile a beacon in the sea of judgment. You ready? She asked softly. Thompson nodded. His stomach churned, but his resolve was ironclad. Inside the room, Principal Williams sat with a clipboard. A stack of sealed test papers lay on the table. Ms. Maxwell perched stiffly by the door, arms crossed, radiating distrust. Miss Carter offered a brief nod of encouragement and then took her place near the window, out of direct view but present. Principal Williams explained the rules again. No phones, no talking, 2 hours maximum. Begin, he said, cracking the seal and sliding the first page toward Thompson. The first problems were elementary. basic algebra and simple geometry. Thompson breezed through them, his pencil flying. Then came trigonometry, logarithms, pre-calculus. Still steady. At the 40-minute mark, he flipped to the fourth page, and his heart leapt. Calculus, real calculus, integration by substitution, differentiation of parametric equations, optimization under constraints. He could feel Ms. Maxwell's skeptical gaze boring into his back, but he shut her out. This was his world now, the world of numbers, patterns, elegant solutions woven from chaos. He worked methodically, not rushing, showing every step with careful precision. For the hardest problem, a multi-step integration, he provided not one solution, but two alternative methods, neatly annotated with notes about efficiency and assumptions. When Thompson finally put his pencil down, only 75 minutes had passed. Principal Williams glanced at the clock, then at the neatly filled test booklet. "All done?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Thompson said, wiping his sweaty palms on his jeans. Ms. Maxwell scoffed audibly. "He rushed. No way it's correct." "We'll see," Principal Williams replied neutrally. Thompson stood slowly, stretching his aching back. Principal Williams carefully collected the test, placing it into a manila envelope. "You may go, Thompson. We'll call you back once the grading is complete." Ms. Carter intercepted him outside the room. "You did your best," she said simply. Thompson nodded, too wrung out to speak. The hours crawled by. Thompson sat through English, history, and lunch, barely registering the lessons. Whispers and stares followed him everywhere. Finally, just after last bell, the call came over the loudspeaker. "Thompson James, please report to the principal's office." His legs felt like lead as he walked down the now empty hallway. Inside the office, Principal Williams sat behind his desk. Miss Carter stood nearby, smiling faintly. Ms. Maxwell was notably absent. "Sit, Thompson," Williams said, gesturing to a cushioned chair this time. He obeyed, heart hammering against his ribs. "We've reviewed your test," Williams began. "Ms. Maxwell, Ms. Carter, and an independent evaluator." Thompson held his breath. "You didn't just pass, Thompson. You excelled." The words hit like sunlight breaking through a storm. "You demonstrated mastery beyond your grade level," Williams continued, his voice tinged with something almost like regret. "Frankly, you're performing at a second-year college level in mathematics." Ms. Carter beamed with pride. Thompson sat stunned, his mind struggling to process it. No accusations, no dismissals, only acknowledgement. Principal Williams leaned forward. "We owe you an apology, son, and a plan. You deserve better than what you've received here." At that moment, all the pain, fear, and isolation of the past year cracked apart inside Thompson, replaced by something fierce and new. Hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, Thompson walked home slower than usual, every step lighter than it had been in months. His fingers toyed with the folded note his mother had tucked into his jacket pocket that morning. Under a street lamp flickering with tired light, he paused and pulled it out. "No matter what happens today, remember, we already know your worth. Shine bright. Love, Mom." The simple words tightened something in Thompson's chest. He slid the note back into his pocket carefully, like a treasure, and kept walking. At home, his parents were waiting, faces tight with anticipation. "Well?" his father asked the moment Thompson opened the door. Thompson dropped his backpack and grinned. "I passed." His mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. His father let out a sharp whoop of pride and scooped Thompson into a fierce hug. They listened intently as Thompson described the test, Principal Williams' words and Ms. Carter's support. "Dr. Roberts is going to help with a special program," he finished, voice barely containing the excitement bubbling inside him. His father beamed, clapping him on the back. "Told you, boy, your mind's going to take you places these hands never could." That night, Thompson barely slept. Dreams of formulas, integrals, and shining futures kept him tossing and turning. The next morning brought more changes than just the weather. Principal Williams had called an emergency meeting with Thompson's parents, Dr. Roberts, and a few key faculty members to lay out a new plan. Ms. Maxwell's absence at the meeting was the first noticeable shift. No cutting remarks, no icy glares. Instead, there was openness. There's an advanced mathematics program at Westside High, Dr. Roberts explained, laying out a pamphlet. We propose Thompson attend their upper-level classes 3 mornings a week. His mother's eyes widened. High school? Already? It's where he belongs academically, Dr. Roberts affirmed. It won't interfere with his other middle school classes, and I'll continue mentoring him personally. And transportation? His father asked, practical as ever. We'll arrange it through the district, Principal Williams promised. It's the least we can do. And what about protection? His mother asked sharply, her eyes flashing. After what he's been through? Principal Williams' face darkened. New policies are being enacted. Mandatory reporting, no physical punishment, anonymous complaint lines for students. What happened will never happen again. Not to Thompson, not to anyone. Slowly, his parents nodded, pride and hesitation wrestling in their expressions. Dr. Roberts leaned in toward Thompson. It's a big step. Are you ready? Thompson looked around the table, the adults who believed in him now, the future unfolding before him. I'm ready, he said firmly. The next few days were a whirlwind. Westside buzzed with rumors. Students craned their necks to glimpse him in the hallways. Some offered shy smiles or awkward waves. Even Zach, his longtime tormentor, approached with a mumble. Hey, if you ever, want to hang out sometime, or, help with homework or something. Thompson didn't trust him yet, but he smiled politely. Maybe. Small steps. Miss Carter invited him to join the Science Club's mentorship project. Mr. Diaz, the new math teacher, offered to set up a peer tutoring program. Change rippled through Westside, not just for Thompson, but for dozens of overlooked kids who were suddenly being seen. On his first day at the high school, Thompson was nervous. He wore his best jeans and a new polo shirt his mother had saved up to buy. As he walked through the front doors, he felt like an ant among giants. But when he stepped into the advanced calculus class, heads turned, and this time, not with mockery. Whispers fluttered. That's the kid from Westside. The genius. The one who beat Maxwell. The teacher, Mr. Patel, a wiry man with kind eyes, welcomed him warmly. Glad to have you with us, Thompson. Heard a lot about you. Thompson's cheeks warmed, but he nodded and took a seat. As Mr. Patel launched into a lecture on multivariable functions, Thompson's nerves melted away. He knew this. He understood this. And for once, he wasn't hiding his light. He was letting it shine. After class, a senior named Luis caught up with him. Hey, that trick you used on the substitution problem, where'd you learn that? Thompson grinned. Library books. And a little help. Luis laughed, slinging an arm around Thompson's shoulders. Man, you're going to fit in just fine. For the first time in a long while, Thompson didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. That night, as he sat at his tiny desk again, a new equation dancing across his notebook, Thompson realized something powerful. Being seen, truly seen, meant more than just success. It meant freedom, freedom to learn, freedom to dream, freedom to become everything he was meant to be, and he wasn't going to waste a single second of it. The weeks that followed were the most exhilarating and exhausting of Thompson's young life. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning, he caught the early bus to Westside High, armed with nothing but a worn-out backpack, a second-hand calculator, and the stubborn hope his parents had sewn into his bones. And every time he walked into advanced calculus, or sat beside juniors and seniors twice his size, he felt that hope expand, growing stronger, louder. At first, some students looked at him like he didn't belong. Middle schooler? One senior boy scoffed on the second day. This class ain't babysitting. But then Mr. Patel called Thompson up to the board to solve a complex optimization problem, and Thompson didn't just solve it. He showed 2 alternate methods, each more efficient than the last. By the time he put down the marker, the same senior boy was whispering to his friends, eyes wide in reluctant respect. Bit by bit, the wall between Thompson and the older students crumbled. Luis introduced him to the mathletes team. Sophia, the class valedictorian hopeful, shared her notes from AP Physics. Even Mrs. Kendrick, the prickly librarian, started setting aside advanced textbooks for him. You're going to need more than high school math soon, she said one day, sliding an introductory differential equations book across the counter with a wink. Back at Westside Middle, Thompson's absence in regular math classes didn't go unnoticed either. In Mr. Diaz's class, a new energy had taken root. Students who had once been silent now raised their hands. Discussions buzzed with curiosity. Mistakes were treated not as failures, but as stepping stones. One afternoon, Mr. Diaz pulled Thompson aside. "Your story lit a fire around here, Thompson," he said, smiling warmly. "You reminded everyone that being different isn't a weakness. It's a strength." Thompson flushed, unsure how to respond, but Mr. Diaz just clapped him on the back and sent him off with a new packet of practice problems, this time on advanced combinatorics. Even Zach, the class clown who once snickered every time Thompson spoke, started to soften. One day at lunch, Zach slid into the seat across from him, a crumpled worksheet in hand. Can you maybe show me how to do these fraction things?" he mumbled, not meeting Thompson's eyes. Thompson hesitated. Old instincts urged him to push Zach away. But another part of him, the part that remembered lonely nights at the kitchen table, struggling alone, won out. "Sure," Thompson said, picking up his pencil. "Let's start with the basics." Bit by bit, Thompson was not only reclaiming his future, he was helping others reclaim theirs too. But not everything was smooth sailing. At home, money remained tight. His father's construction jobs were irregular. His mother's nursing shifts left her bone-tired. Sometimes the bus fare to the high school was a painful scrape. Thompson never complained. Instead, he got creative. He offered free tutoring sessions after school at the community center, where grateful parents sometimes slipped him a few dollars for snacks or transportation. And then there was the matter of Dr. Roberts. The older man remained a constant presence, meeting Thompson every Saturday at the library or walking him through advanced concepts over the phone on weeknights. "You're progressing faster than most of my freshmen," Dr. Roberts said one evening, adjusting his glasses. "You realize you're only a year or two away from tackling real university-level research?" Thompson gaped at him. "Like published papers and stuff?" Dr. Roberts chuckled. "Exactly like that." The idea was dizzying. Publishing, researching, contributing. It was more than he had dared dream. But it also came with fear. Was he ready? Could a kid like him, poor, black, invisible until just recently, really belong in that world? One rainy Thursday afternoon, after a particularly grueling calculus session, Thompson found himself sitting alone in the Westside Middle Library, staring blankly at a half-finished proof. He felt stuck, overwhelmed. Maybe Ms. Maxwell had been right all along. Maybe he was just a lucky fluke, a kid who memorized a few things well enough to fake it. The old voice, the one that whispered he didn't belong, that he wasn't enough, pressed against his ribs like a vice. But just as the doubt threatened to consume him, a familiar voice broke through the storm. "You okay, champ?" It was Mr. Diaz carrying a stack of graded papers. Thompson hesitated, then blurted out, "What if I'm not as smart as everyone thinks?" Mr. Diaz sat down across from him, setting the papers aside. "You know what the smartest people I've ever met all have in common?" he asked. Thompson shook his head. "They all doubt themselves sometimes," Mr. Diaz said simply, "but the difference is, they don't let that doubt decide who they are." He leaned in. "You've earned every step you've taken, Thompson. Doubt if you must, but keep stepping forward anyway." The words sank deep, soothing the ache in Thompson's chest. Maybe doubt was part of the journey. Maybe feeling unworthy sometimes didn't mean he was unworthy. It just meant he was reaching for something bigger than fear. That night, Thompson opened his calculus notebook again. He picked up his pencil, and he kept going. The day of the State Math Invitational arrived faster than Thompson expected. It was a brisk Saturday morning when he and Dr. Roberts pulled up in front of the sprawling auditorium where the competition was held, a modern glass structure shimmering beneath the rising sun. Thompson clutched his worn backpack tightly as they stepped inside. Students from across the state milled around, some wearing matching team jackets, others hunched over last-minute study guides. Laughter, nervous chatter, and the occasional squeak of sneakers on the polished floor filled the air. Everywhere Thompson looked, he saw brilliance. Polished kids from prestigious schools, Students with private tutors, math coaches, and support systems he had only dreamed about. He tightened his grip on his backpack, the old familiar voice whispering again, "You don't belong here." But then he caught sight of Dr. Roberts, watching him with steady, unwavering faith. "You ready?" the professor asked. Thompson nodded, maybe not feeling ready, but determined to act like it anyway. "Remember," Dr. Roberts said gently, "you're not here to prove anything to anyone. You're here because you belong." The opening ceremony began with a whirlwind of introductions and rule explanations. Names like Windermere Prep, Sterling Academy, and Easton Charter echoed across the loudspeakers. When they called Westside Middle, a few heads turned in mild surprise. What was a middle school student doing at a high school level competition? Thompson ignored them. When his division's first round began, he sat down at a plain desk, heart hammering in his ears. A proctor handed out the first set of problems: algebra, trigonometry, and early calculus. For a terrifying moment, all the numbers blurred. He squeezed his eyes shut, took a slow breath, and remembered Dr. Roberts' words, "Trust your instincts." When he opened his eyes again, the problems came into focus. Patterns emerged. Solutions unfolded. His pencil danced across the page. One question led to another and another. It was like unlocking a secret language only he could hear. After the first round, Thompson leaned back in his chair, stunned to realize he had completed every problem, some even with alternate methods, just as Dr. Roberts had taught him. He was escorted to the break room while scores were tallied. There, huddled in a corner, he nursed a lukewarm cup of cocoa and tried not to overthink. Around him, clusters of students compared answers, nervously laughing, already strategizing for the next round. Thompson kept to himself until a boy with messy blonde hair and a Windermere Prep jacket approached. "Hey," the boy said, plopping into the seat beside him without asking. "You from Westside?" Thompson nodded warily. "Middle school, right?" "Yeah." The boy grinned. "Dude, that's crazy. I heard you crushed round one." Thompson blinked. "You heard?" The boy shrugged. "Word travels fast, especially when you're the underdog." He stuck out his hand. "I'm Caleb." "Thompson," he replied, shaking it. Caleb leaned in conspiratorially. "I kind of hope you win, you know? Stick it to all these prep school snobs." Thompson chuckled despite himself. "We'll see." The second round was tougher, pure calculus. Thompson faced a brutal integral on the second page that made his palms sweat. He stalled for a minute, panic clawing at the edge of his mind. "I can't." But then he remembered the late nights, the scribbled notes, the endless sessions at the library. He remembered his father's calloused hands sketching rough measurements in the air, his mother's tired smile as she slipped new notebooks into his backpack. He remembered everything he had fought for, and he dug deep. One by one, the problems yielded to his determination. By the time the final round ended, Thompson was drained. He found Dr. Roberts in the lobby, waiting with a small smile. "How'd it go?" the professor asked. Thompson shrugged, feeling a strange mix of pride and fear. "I think I did okay." They didn't have long to wait. An hour later, the judges called everyone back into the auditorium. Students filed into the rows, buzzing with nervous energy. Principal Williams was there too, having driven up after hearing from Miss Carter about the competition. When they called the top 10 finalists, Thompson listened with bated breath. 10th place, 9th, 8th. When they announced 4th place, Thompson's heart sank. He hadn't heard his name yet. Maybe I didn't make it at all. And then, 1st place, Thompson Carter, Westside Middle School. The room went silent for a fraction of a second, just long enough for disbelief to register, before applause erupted. Thompson sat frozen for a beat, stunned. Dr. Roberts nudged him gently. "Go on, champ." Thompson rose on shaking legs, walked toward the stage through a gauntlet of wide-eyed stares, and accepted his medal with trembling fingers. As he turned back toward the audience, he spotted his parents in the doorway, his father in a threadbare work jacket, his mother in her scrubs, both beaming with pride. Tears pricked his eyes, but he blinked them away. For the first time in his life, he wasn't invisible. He wasn't the kid nobody believed in. He was Thompson Carter, champion, and he had only just begun. Winning the state math invitational changed everything, and nothing at the same time. On Monday morning, as Thompson walked through the halls of Westside Middle School, a strange hush followed him. Students he had never spoken to before stared openly. A few whispered to each other, stealing glances like he was some rare artifact on display. Zach, the class clown who had once mocked him, actually stepped aside to let Thompson pass. "Hey, congrats, man," Zach mumbled, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. Thompson nodded, unsure how to respond. It was easier to just keep walking. He wasn't used to being seen like this. Inside Miss Carter's classroom, a surprise awaited him. The whiteboard was covered in colorful writing. "Congratulations, Thompson, our state champion." Balloons floated lazily near the ceiling. A small table was piled with cupcakes and a giant card signed by dozens of students and teachers. Miss Carter beamed at him from her desk. "You deserve to be celebrated," she said warmly. Thompson felt heat rise to his cheeks. He murmured a thank you and made his way to his seat, feeling a little overwhelmed, but touched nonetheless. Not everyone was thrilled, though. When he passed by the teacher's lounge later that day, he overheard snippets of conversation, voices low but bitter. Fast-tracked because of that competition. One event doesn't prove real ability. Making a big deal out of nothing. Thompson recognized one of the voices immediately. Veronica Maxwell. She had returned to school, pending the final outcome of the investigation. For now, she was barred from teaching, stuck doing clerical work. She hated every second of it, and she hated him even more for the part he had played in her downfall. Thompson quickened his pace. He knew better than to expect everyone to cheer for him. Some people would always resent him simply for daring to be more than they expected. Later that week, Principal Williams called Thompson and his parents into his office. They sat down together, the air humming with anticipation. "I've been in contact with the state university," Principal Williams began, smiling broadly. "After reviewing your performance, they've offered you a full scholarship to their summer mathematics honors program." Thompson's mother gasped. "A full scholarship?" she repeated, her voice trembling. Principal Williams nodded. "All expenses paid. Housing, meals, materials, even a stipend." Thompson sat frozen, struggling to process the words. "You earned this," Principal Williams said, his voice warm. "Not just because you're talented, but because you worked harder than anyone knew." Tears welled in Mrs. Thompson's eyes. Mr. Thompson squeezed his son's shoulder so hard it almost hurt. For a moment, none of them could speak. Thompson finally found his voice. "Thank you, sir." "No," Principal Williams said, his expression serious. "Thank you, Thompson, for reminding all of us what it means to believe." As they left the office, a small crowd of students and teachers had gathered in the hallway, cheering as Thompson stepped out. Someone started chanting, "Thompson! Thompson!" He laughed, an unguarded, joyful sound, and lifted his hand in a shy wave. In the months that followed, Westside Middle School continued its transformation. A mentorship program was launched for students with advanced academic abilities. Anonymous reporting systems were implemented to ensure student safety. New training programs for teachers focused on recognizing hidden talents and preventing bias. Ms. Maxwell's termination was finalized quietly, without much ceremony. She packed up her things and left the school for good, a relic of an outdated system that no longer had a place there. Meanwhile, Thompson flourished. At the summer program, he studied alongside some of the brightest young minds in the state. He tackled complex theories, engaged in heated debates about the nature of infinity, and even gave a short lecture on mathematical elegance, earning a standing ovation from professors twice his age. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. But the best part wasn't the awards or the accolades. It was the letters he received, handwritten notes from younger students at Westside. Letters that said things like, "Because of you, I believe I can be smart too. Thank you for showing people that kids like us can be great. I want to be like you when I grow up." Thompson kept every single one, tucked safely in a worn shoebox under his bed. Whenever doubts crept in, as they sometimes did, he would pull them out and remember why he kept fighting. Not for trophies, not for applause, but because every child deserved to be seen. Every mind deserved a chance to shine. And sometimes all it took was one brave voice standing up and saying, "I can." Summer ended far too quickly. As September rolled in, Thompson found himself once again standing in front of Westside Middle School. Only now, everything felt different. He wasn't just Thompson, the kid who once sat in the back of the room trying to disappear. He was Thompson Carter, the student whose name had become synonymous with perseverance, brilliance, and change. Principal Williams personally welcomed him back, shaking his hand like he was greeting a visiting dignitary. Even students who used to tease him now lined up to ask for help with homework or just to say hi. At lunch, Thompson sat with a small group of students who had become his unofficial crew. Aisha, the shy girl who once stood up for him, Zach, the former class clown turned unlikely ally, and a few new faces who looked up to him with wide-eyed admiration. But it wasn't all easy. With visibility came pressure. Every mistake felt magnified. Every wrong answer carried weight it hadn't before. During a routine math quiz in his advanced class, Thompson froze on a problem, a simple mistake, and felt panic tighten his chest. The whispers started almost immediately. "I thought he was supposed to be a genius. Guess it was just a fluke." That night, he sat in his bedroom staring at his open textbook, the familiar sting of doubt creeping back in. He wondered if maybe Miss Maxwell had been right all along. Maybe he wasn't as special as people thought. Maybe he was just a lucky kid who had stumbled into the spotlight. He was about to slam the book shut when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Roberts. "Mistakes don't define mathematicians. Perseverance does. Call me if you need to talk." Thompson stared at the message for a long time. Then slowly he picked up his pencil and turned to the next page. One mistake didn't erase everything he had accomplished. One stumble didn't erase the mountain he had already climbed. The next day he walked back into class, head high, and finished the quiz. Perfectly. Ms. Carter later pulled him aside and said quietly, "You're not here to be perfect, Thompson. You're here to be real." And somehow that meant more to him than any award ever could. The year unfolded with a series of milestones. Thompson helped organize the school's first ever mathletes team, mentoring younger students and leading them to victories at regional competitions. He partnered with Miss Carter to launch a Saturday STEM program for underrepresented students across the district. He gave a speech at the district's education conference about fostering hidden talents, receiving a standing ovation from a crowd of teachers and administrators. And through it all, he stayed humble, never forgetting the library nights, the late study sessions by flashlight, or the feeling of being dismissed before anyone ever saw his worth. At the Winter Awards ceremony, when Thompson was named Student of the Year, the entire gymnasium erupted in applause. Principal Williams handed him the plaque, smiling broadly. "You didn't just excel, Thompson," he said. "You changed what we believe is possible." Standing at the podium, facing a sea of faces, Thompson hesitated. He thought about the younger version of himself, the boy who had been too afraid to speak, too small to be noticed. And he spoke not to the adults, not to the students who already believed, but to the ones still hiding in the corners, still doubting, still shrinking under the weight of low expectations. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he began simply. "At least not according to the people who only saw what I looked like, not what I could do." He paused, feeling the weight of 100 held breaths. But talent doesn't come with a label, and it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it waits, sometimes it needs someone else to believe first. He smiled, small and real. "If you're sitting there thinking you don't belong, I'm here to tell you that you do." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing against the rafters. In the crowd, Thompson spotted his parents, beaming with pride. Dr. Roberts gave him a subtle thumbs up. Ms. Carter wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. And somewhere deep inside, Thompson felt a quiet, powerful certainty. He had found his place, not because someone gave it to him, but because he had claimed it. Through every late night, every silent struggle, every moment of invisible courage. The world had finally seen him, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure it never forgot the others who still waited to be seen. The summer after Thompson's monumental school year, he stood once more at the steps of Westside Middle School, but not as a student. This time he had been invited as a keynote speaker for the district's new initiative. the Every Child Seen program, a direct legacy of the battles he had fought. His parents sat in the front row alongside Dr. Roberts and Miss Carter. The auditorium buzzed with hundreds of students, teachers, parents, and administrators, all gathered to hear from the boy who had once been nearly erased from their system. When Thompson took the stage, he didn't clutch his notes nervously. He didn't look down. He looked up into the sea of faces waiting to hear what he had to say. He told them about fear, how it wraps around your voice and convinces you that silence is safer than speaking. He told them about doubt, how it seeps into your bones when people in power tell you you're not enough. He told them about perseverance, how it doesn't roar, it whispers stubbornly in the dead of night, keep going. And finally, he told them about truth. Truth that brilliance can come from anywhere. Truth that genius doesn't always wear the face people expect. Truth that when you believe in a child, really believe, you don't just change their future. You change the world. When he finished, there was a moment of deep silence, more powerful than applause. And then the standing ovation began. Wave after wave of people rising to their feet, clapping not just for a boy who had solved a calculus problem, but for the movement he had sparked. Later that evening, Thompson walked through the familiar hallways of Westside. On the wall outside the library, a new mural had been painted, vibrant colors swirling into the words, "Every student deserves to be seen." He ran his fingers lightly over the rough texture of the paint, feeling the truth of it vibrate under his skin. It hadn't been easy. There were still battles to fight, still minds to open, still systems to reform. But the world had changed. A little, because one boy had refused to sit down. One boy had chosen to stand, even when it hurt, and in doing so, he had taught an entire community a lesson more important than any calculus equation: that every child matters, that every voice deserves to be heard, that the smallest light can break through the deepest darkness. Standing in front of the mural, Thompson closed his eyes for a moment and made a silent promise. To himself, to the students who would come after him, to the world still learning how to see. A promise never to let another hidden genius be silenced, never to let another quiet dreamer go unnoticed, never to forget that change doesn't come from waiting for permission. It comes from standing up when everyone expects you to sit down. And if he could do it, a quiet boy from a small apartment, armed with nothing but stubborn hope and a love of numbers, then anyone could. Even you, especially you. Before you go, dear friend, if Thompson's journey touched your heart, we invite you to take a stand too. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story of hidden brilliance, untold courage, and the unstoppable light within ordinary people. Together, let's make sure every voice is heard, every talent is nurtured, and every child knows they are seen. Because one act of belief can change a life, and one life can change the world. Thank you for being part of this journey.